Well, hello, everyone. We're glad to be here at the Green Book Insights Tech Showcase for social media. We're Converseon. Many of you may know us for our natural language processing technologies and have been doing this since 2008. Today, we're here to actually introduce you to a new solution, which is an evolution from our core technologies, something that we call the Social Brand Reputation Intelligence Index. It's a bit of a mouthful, so we have a SRII for shorthand, and we're excited to show this to you today. Converseon, as I just mentioned, leader in the social listening in 2008. We're a Forrester leader, Gartner Magic Quadrant. But today we really focus on using our natural language processing technologies and our advanced analytics to help power some of the other social listening platforms that exist for advanced analysis, and also provide direct solutions to some of the largest brands in the world, as you can see here. Our focus truly is on making social data not only clean, but also driving this into real analytics. And our core platform is called Converseon AI. Some of you may have seen demos of this in the past. Converseon AI is an auto NLP platform that allows even general business users who are not technical or data scientists to build and deploy their own NLP models directly into multiple platforms. And we have partnerships with platforms that you may be seeing today as well, like Brandwatch and Linkfluence and Pulsar and others, as well as BI platforms. So if you have a current social listening effort underway and you want to elevate that through more customization and custom natural language processing models, this platform is a companion solution to that to allow you to do so. But today we're focusing on something else. What we see in the social listening space is a move from general social listening, which many our companies are already doing today, even moving through social intelligence, where human analysts are involved in looking at the data and making sense of the data, to something we call decision intelligence. We live in a world where sometimes real time isn't always fast enough, and we really need to kind of understand which metrics matter, which metrics really underpin and drive business this impact, and being able to have the foresight to understand what we can do to help make changes to be able to deliver real business value. So Converseon's mission in life is to transform this social listening data into real decision intelligence. And you're going to see this through this solution that we're presenting to you today. So the Converseon Brand Reputation Index is the only rigorous reputation measurement guidance system that's in real time. And real time being that we're using social listening data, but we're combining it with custom NLP and advanced analytics. And we're doing a lot of things that kind of solve the pain points around reputation measurement. So, this is all built off of our Converseon NLP technologies, et cetera, et cetera. But it actually really gets to separating the real signals that are important for reputation within the data sets very clearly. And we're using kind of a Bayesian scoring model. So we're applying a level of advanced analytics on top of this data to really get to the stuff that matters. But we're actually able to, as opposed to some of the more survey-based trackers and other things for reputation, we're actually doing this in real time. And we're understanding which of those attributes at the end of the day are actually truly impacting business value. And we're going to show you this. In this case, it's going to be shareholder value. Oftentimes it's sales, et cetera, as well. And we're discovering the things that we didn't know to look for. So we're using organic topic discovery and other things as well to discover those attributes and topics and issues that often are off the radar of traditional kind of survey-based reputation trackers, and discovering the things that you can take early action on and putting it into a risk opportunity matrix so that you can take action on it. And we're providing it in different ways. So many of these models that we're talking about, if you're happen to be using many of the leading social listening platforms and you want to access some of the solutions that we have today, in many cases we can turn them on because we have API integrations with those solutions. But we're also delivering these solutions directly through BI, custom visualization, which we're going to show you as well today, so you can really make sense of the data. It's important to kind of think about how we approach things today and where our technology sits into the stack. Many of the folks already have a basic social listening platform, so they're doing data aggregation for us. We're now then applying this level of custom NLP, not just for sentiment analysis, but for things like trust and advocacy and detraction and safety and price and all of these other classifications of data that are essential to be able to measure for we're measuring reputation. We're then applying all of this classification against the reputation framework that we've developed that looks at multiple different dimensions, but we're also again looking at that data that hasn't been effectively classified into these neatly into these classifications, because that's where these called black swans and other things are. And we're putting into a layer of advanced analytics and presenting it to you so that you can report accurately and effectively and rigorously on your brand's reputation across different dimensions and how you compare to others and root cause analysis. So it's quite an exciting solution that takes social listening to the next step in this particular use case. The framework that we're working with actually looks at many different dimensions. So one of the things that our Bayesian scoring system allows us to do is to look at everything through the lens of consumer memory, of how consumer perceptions are changing over time, not just the dips and noisiness of every day. It breaks down the classifications into certain areas. So we have CSR ESG, so it's corporate social responsibility, or some people refer to as ESG, or environment, social, and governance. So we're social listening data into these areas as well. We're looking at trust, brand trust. And what's important with this solution is we're not looking just at explicit Boolean-based keyword analysis, but we're actually getting to real implicit meanings. So a consumer may say, they won't say, I trust a brand. They say, I use the product for my baby because my baby sleeps better. It's an expression of human trust that we also understand, but also others can understand. We're also looking for experience, both at the functional level and the emotional level. So things like, safety or price, etc. But also looking at the emotional aspects of that, around frustration or joy, etc. as well. And for clients who have custom attributes that they'd like to look at, we can also build those and apply those as well. This is all applied across stakeholder groups, because when we look at reputation, we simply don't want to look at aggregate reputation in general. We do at a certain level, but we also want to be able to break it down by these different groups. And these groups include your customer segments. So are these people real kind of customers or not, and getting to any audience demographics associated with that. But we also want to be able to look at your employees and break that out separately. We look at the community, which often in this world of values and polarization, et cetera, are scrutinizing your business on what actions they may take, et cetera. So we're looking at that as well. And we're looking at the financial community and investors in your organization. We're looking at your reputation scoring across multiple different dimensions, but also across these multiple stakeholder groups. But what's interesting about the solution is not only at that top level, aggregate level, that we're looking at reputation and looking at the sub attributes, so such as ESG, but even underneath that, we have classified this data into drivers. And so if we just look at the ESG, with environment, social governance here, you can see under the social dimension, there's multiple different dimensions under that as well too, going from anti-racism to ethical advertising and fighting poverty, etc. So what we're going to be able to show you here is a clear breakdown, a funnel from your top line reputation all the way to your attributes, all the way to your sub attributes. So it's highly actionable. One of the important things that we're doing here, and I referenced this earlier, is to be able to do this level of reputation analysis, we cannot just take raw social conversation data as it is. We not only filter it through very precise classifications for things that go way beyond sentiment, so trust, advocacy, and all those other areas that we talked about, but we add a level of Bayesian scoring so that we're really separating the signals from the noise. And if you look at the left, you can see kind of the blue is the actual kind of noise within social data for a particular airline, and the orange is when that data goes through a Bayesian scoring system that allows us to actually incorporate consumer memory into the score so we can understand what's statistically valid. The other thing that we're doing is we're putting this data through voice of customer filters, because what we found is that in many industries that sometimes only 15 to 20% of the actual conversations in a particular industry are coming from actual consumers. The rest of it are bots, job listings, other things as well. So if we're trying to measure reputation or measure anything for insights with this data, if you're doing it on the totality of the data and not getting to actual consumer voices, you're liable to be able to get into problems of misleading insights as well. So this is all built into the system already. And at this point, I'm going to hand this over to Brad, who is going to talk about the couple different dimensions of this, as well as my colleague Ben, who's going to get into another dimension of this as well too. And then we're going to flip it over and show you what this looks like in a live environment. So on that note, Brad, perhaps you can explain the assess model here.
Thank you, Rob. So what we have here is an executive scorecard, and the whole goal is that it is quick and fast to see where you are, how you're doing, and to see your month-on-month change or week-on-week, as well as how you're doing versus the rest of the industry and your key competitors. So a lot of information, but very simply presented. The real key here is to see, have we done well or not? And if we have, why? And if we haven't, why? Why not? So that's why you see now the diagnose section. For diagnose, we're really trying to deep dive and see what are the sub attributes that are difficult for us, where are we losing ground, and where are we winning ground. And if you look a little bit on the left hand side, you see there's even a heat map, and that heat map really just tells us again at a glance where we're winning and where we're losing. The goal is to have the information organized in a way that you can consume it very quickly. So all of the complexity that Rob spoke about in terms of getting the right data, filtering out the noise, framing it up within a reputation framework is then presented in a very easy and simple way for everyone to digest. And that's key. So we focused a lot on getting a design where the information is communicated to you and your teams in a very simple way to see where we're winning, where we're losing, who's beating us, and how they're doing it. We then move on to the next section, which is to predict and simulate. So now we know what our score is. We know why we're doing well or why we are not doing well, why the competitor is doing well. And then we say, let's play with these different variables. Let's change things. If we could impact and change the market, what would the outcome be? So, for example, you might have an investment of sorts that you would like to make in a certain message around your environmental policies, and you estimate it's going to have an impact in the market. Well, no longer do you have to wonder, is this worth it or not? But you can actually use the model, input different variables, and change the sliders. So it's, again, very simple to use, and it will estimate the impact on the particular business metric that you've decided to use for the model. At this point, we're going to switch over to the live demo of the actual software and of the various different information. So Ben, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. So going to dive right in here with an actual demo of the assessment and diagnosis piece, what we've been talking about today. In this case, we're looking at real data, so real social media data populating the dashboard here. We're looking at the quick service restaurant industry in particular, and we're looking specifically at Burger King in this case. So there is an ability, as Brad mentioned earlier, to see not just for your brand. Let's say I work for Burger King, and I'm interested in understanding my brand's performance specifically, but I can also look at my competitors. You can see a list of competitors that are included in this particular dashboard right here. But the point is, this is an assessment view. So again, as Brad mentioned, at a glance, I can understand how I'm doing over time, what's my score. And again, as Rob was describing earlier, this is based on and benefits from the Bayesian approach that we use to assess favorability and your overall reputation score over time. On that also, so this data is looking particularly at corporate citizenship for the QSR industry. So that's CSR and ESG, which Rob was talking about earlier. It's one of the pillars of our larger reputation framework. So to dive into a bit of the narrative here, if I'm Burger King, I can see, okay, there's a particular trough, a 3-month trough in my perception right here around June, July, and August of 2020. So I can understand right away, okay, I'm not doing very well at that time. I can see exactly what my score was for that month. I can see how much it's changed from the prior month, how much volume there is behind that. So that's the resonance score. So it lets me know that there actually is a critical mass of conversation behind this. That's importantly not something you would get from a conventional net sentiment-based approach to understanding favorability or perception. And then right away, even on the assess page, I can start to get a taste of the diagnosis, start to understand a little bit of why or what issues might be driving that big dip in my overall corporate citizenship score for the month of July 2020. So I can see, okay, for my lowest scoring attributes and my lowest scoring drivers or sub-attributes, what's going on there. So governance and social responsibility are the lowest scoring, followed by trust, but really it's governance and social responsibility, the lowest scoring attributes. And I can see that not only are they the lowest scoring this month, but they've dipped quite a lot from the previous month. So that's already the indication of, with social media, some virality potentially around a specific event that's caused this to happen. Going over to the drivers, I can see within governance and social what issues, what sub-attributes might be contributing to that. Labor relations, protests, and LGBTQ employees. Also worth noting is that I can also see where I'm doing well, right? So while my overall score might be quite poor for this month, I can still see within this a more nuanced message right away that there are some areas where I'm performing well. So with environmental responsibility, I have net positive favorability. It's gone up quite a bit from the previous month. There is significant volume behind it, and it appears that it has to do with reduction of emissions and pollution. So right away, I've got an assessment of my overall position and a taste of what might be driving it. But maybe I want to go deeper. I want to look more closely at these driving sub-attributes and attributes. So for that, I would go over to a driver analysis view. And you can see here, a spider chart, which shows, again, for Burger King in the month of July, its score across all these attributes related to corporate citizenship, trust, CSR, environment, social governance. But let's take a look closer at governance, because if you recall, we saw that was an attribute that was driving a lot of negative perception for Burger King's corporate citizenship in the month of July. And right away, I can see for all the issues associated with governance, there's a clear takeaway here that LGBTQ employees, protests, and labor relations are driving a big dip. They're very negative, right, in this month, and then they've moved significantly since the prior month. Scrolling further down, I can confirm that again, seeing the line chart. Yep, they take a big dip in July and are very slow to recover after that. And then driving down into the actual mentions, I can see exactly what in this case, sort of viral event on social media drove that. We see on Twitter breaking news about a Burger King workers being on strike after a trans coworker died when they were unable to take sick time off of work after displaying COVID-19 symptoms. And then we see the use of some prominent hashtags, so trans lives matter, right away. So we can see clearly an issue that is related to corporate citizenship, but very quickly we're able to get very specific as to what it is that might be causing that overall dip in perception for corporate citizenship. On the other hand, just a quick note, we can also see where we might be doing well, right? So I alluded to this earlier with environmental responsibility, right? So you can see for Burger King that the score here is actually quite positive. Apologies, the page is just reloading here. So we can also see where we're doing quite well here. So in this case, for environmental responsibility, we can see that the score is significantly more positive than the other attributes. And if I drill down into that to understand the driving issues, again, the top scoring issue becomes clear right away. Reduction of emissions and pollution for Burger King is driving that positivity for environmental responsibility. And if I look at that attribute trended over the entire research timeframe, I can see, yep, this is where it first kind of takes an uptick, is in July, right? I can see there's significant volume here, and that the favorability is quite positive. And drilling down into that, I can see what it is. So Burger King has launched an initiative for basically reducing methane in cattle farming that's sourcing the meat for their restaurants, and that this has actually received some traction on Twitter, and people are sharing it and talking about it, and that's driving this sort of net positive perception around environmental responsibility. So that's just a quick dive into some real data. Hopefully, this is just painting a picture of how this system can work, taking you through a sort of funnel from the overall perception into the specific issues that are contributing to that. Next, we're going to move into a sort of a more important so what from a business perspective, which is how is this actually impacting my bottom line, my business, whatever the business metric might be that you choose to measure through this system. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brad Taylor, who's going to take you through a bit of that.
Thank you, Ben. And what we're now looking at is the simulator. And there's a few little things we need to look at. Again, we're going to just use Burger King as an example. And what we did was we took the quarterly revenue for a number of publicly traded fast food companies because they are obliged to report, so the EDGAR database. And we took the quarterly revenues and we then decomposed the contribution that each of these CSR and CX measures make to that overall revenue. And you can see here the predictions are actually quite good for Burger King. It's a relatively stable, and there's a little bit of seasonality which the model needs to take into account, but it's relatively stable. Of course, we are not saying that CSR and CX move the needle entirely, but rather we're saying of the piece that we can explain, we do quite well. And you can see there's also some parts that the model struggled to explain. And if we jump over to someone like KFC, for example, there's a number of different pieces we didn't capture. So by no means we want to say this is perfect, because I think that's an illusion, but rather these are useful models which have been created, which you are then able to scenario plan and use to understand the effects that yourself plus others might, your competitors might have in the market. So if we look here at the moment, we're on 1.49 billion revenue for the quarter. And let's take the example of CSR and say, okay, on environment, that Burger King really makes a massive push. And we're able to drag this across to about 15%. That 1.49 then moves up to 1.52. So in other words, we've seen a 30 million change in their overall revenue, or that's what we would predict would take place. And it seems feasible as well. So they could attract a fair amount of business, but it's certainly not going to be a complete game changer for them. However, we also know that not only can a company drive volume on social media, they need to be careful of their score. And this is where the Bayesian score comes in. What is the quality, the overall quality of these conversations, the intensity of them, and how positive or negative they are mixed in with the volume? There's actually a number of calculations that go into that. I've just shared a few of them. And it's quite a complex score, but essentially we can also say, well, as you increase the volume, perhaps your score decreases. And so you can see the effect of that. So now 1.49 is only 1.5. We've made a 10 million difference because we couldn't push the volume at the same quality as before. That might not be our only initiative. We might also say, let's really push customer satisfaction. And with customer satisfaction, we made a number of process improvements. So not only do we expect the volume to increase through some sort of initiative, perhaps we're giving vouchers away for people who post online about us, or some competition that's run about what we did in terms of the different food that we provided, the service we provided. We expect the quality to go up because, we'll be able to push a more positive message and really influence people's minds. Now, social media, of course, has some driving effect on companies' revenues, but mostly what this model is about is measuring the consumer's response to what you do and understanding that in a herd mentality, if you like, as a group average, your core target market and perhaps the secondary target market. What do they think and how are they responding and how does their behavior change? That's ultimately what we are now simulating. The interesting thing is you could gain quite a lot through that customer satisfaction and environmental efforts, almost 100 million. Now, what one can also do is say, well, what happens if our competitor, McDonald's, again, not a perfect model, but did really well, in a lot of areas. What happens if they really pushed environmental? And for argument's sake, customer satisfaction. Quality environmental will drop a little bit. Customer satisfaction, let's just say it remains constant. And we can see their change now is not as big in a percent-wise as what Burger King would have been. So now we enter into the ability to scenario plan, to play off different scenarios that could take place, and understand if your competition does something, how do you respond? If you do something and you anticipate their response, what would that mean in the market? Are you all just going to net out each other's scenarios? So in other words, if everyone pushes on environment, surely not everyone can win on environment. That's a share, a slice of the pie that each of you will have. So you're now able to start understanding, okay, this is what the new market will be. These are what the new market shares will be. And therefore, a little bit better, perhaps, this is the reasonable course of action we should take to improve our business, or the reasonable course we should take to respond to what competitors are doing. And I'm going to hand back to Rob now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben and Brad. And thank you for everyone for participating in this demo today. I think what we've been able to show you here is a series of processes that we built into our technology that has really taken this raw social conversation data all the way through to the assessment and diagnose and now predictive stage, which we think is a very exciting and very valuable organizations looking to measure the dimensions that fall under reputation, including customer experience, social responsibility, et cetera, as well. And we want to thank Greenbook for the opportunity to show this to you. We're available for some questions. And I would certainly emphasize again that if you have a current social listening platform, this is complementary to it. That a lot of these models and classifications are available to be pulled through those current platforms that you're working with through our API integration, but also to be able to deliver this to you in a clean, effective scorecard that can be used across the organization to improve your overall reputation and to help understand it in a period of time where foresight is more important than anything. So thanks again, everyone, and we look forward to questions.